watched The Terminator?
Yes.
Anyone? Nice. Okay, I mean, I could see some confused faces over there, so I'm gonna give like a brief summary of what it is. It is basically an 80s film about AI trying to kill a girl so that humans can't stop AI from taking over the world. Well, this is an extreme example of what lethal autonomous weapons are. And this is how one of them looks like nowadays. I cannot use the actual picture due to copyright, but what I'm trying to show here is a drone called Karu 2 that was used in the military conflict in Libya in 2020. And it is operated autonomously by machine learning and real-time image processing against targets. Well, so far, there is no internationally agreed definition of what lethal autonomous weapons are. However, they're known as weapon system that could be operated autonomously in order to carry out attacks. And world leaders have been saying, oh, this could increase accuracy of attacks, and this would reduce casualties because we're not sending our own troops out, and also this could better reach military objectives. But wait a second, is this really the case? Well, lethal autonomous weapons are called lethal for a reason. What we're actually doing here is starting a new arms race. We're allowing AI to take over decision-making processes and also allowing them to have the power to take human lives over. As you could probably imagine, this has caused a lot of controversy, a lot of debates. So what happened is in 2016, the UN has decided to form a group of governmental experts called the GGE to discuss about lethal autonomous weapons. And they had their first meeting in 2017 and had ones every year, basically. But as you can imagine, this is the UN. Are they ever efficient? Anyways. Yeah. So they meet every year. They basically have the same conclusions, same debates every year, not really having something concrete. But here's a summary of what they have discussed. 3 points to take away. Firstly, that they have decided that international humanitarian law, from now on I'll call that IHL, still applies to lethal autonomous weapons. And secondly, they've decided that human control and responsibility are essential. And thirdly, and weirdly, they've encouraged countries to share their newest technologies and lethal autonomous weapons so that everyone can sit together, have a discussion, and then figure out a common standard. Yeah, I can see someone like shaking their heads, yeah. To figure out a common standard on human control and human responsibility in regards to the use of this. And also in deciding whether or not it aligns with the principle of humanity, which is basically universal values of humanity. Well, I could see some heads shaking just now, so I'm just gonna point out quickly what the two problems with this is. So firstly, come on, this is a national security problem. You're basically encouraging countries to share their newest inventions, newest lethal autonomous weapons out, but who is gonna do that? So that other countries could copy what they've just invented, or other countries could figure out some new technology to counteract to what they've just invented. Well, basically, this just doesn't work. It's basically impractical. And the second thing is figuring out a universal value on something that's so new. I can tell you right now that if we have a group discussion just with everyone in this room, it's really hard for us to have a consensus as to what we think about such new technology or what we think about lethal autonomous weapons, whether they should be banned, whether we need human responsibility, let alone just a few government experts sitting together representing the world on what they think about universal values. So, without a way forward, then are existing laws sufficient? So this comes to my research. My research has shown that unfortunately, existing laws are insufficient, and that lethal autonomous weapons do not conform with the fundamental principles of international humanitarian law. I'll bring to you today 3 principles from the IHL and explain to you why lethal autonomous weapons cannot conform with them. The first principle would be the principle of distinction. What this means is basically distincting between civilians and soldiers, civilian objects and military objects. A brief example of this would be distinguishing between a soldier in combat or someone who is just playing taekwondo. And the problem with this is in order to make the right decision, you have to consider circumstances, right? You can't just rely on numbers or technical indicators. And as a result, AI can't do that, at least not now. And on the second principle, which is the principle of precaution, this is relatively easier to understand. It's basically adequate care and consideration before making an attack. It is like, how sure are you that you're attacking a soldier who is probably going to kill you later, or an innocent civilian who just passed by? And we can see here that this requires a certain amount of care and human empathy when we try to be cautious about something. And unfortunately, AI cannot do that. They do not have the human judgment, the human values, care, compassion to attack cautiously. And thirdly, on the principle of proportionality. Well, this one is a little bit harder to understand, but we'll pull through. It is basically weighing up between military objectives, military advantages over civilian harm. And unfortunately, lethal autonomous weapons can't do that either, because military advantages cannot be easily quantified. And this principle also requires AI to justify their own actions. After all, AI are made by humans. Our mistakes, our biases are also incorporated into them. So this is why we say that it's important to ensure human responsibility and human control. So there's enough human judgment into them, and that they could be, so that all circumstances could be considered, and making sure that there's an accurate result being carried out. So the world leaders have actually talked about how this could increase accuracy. However, they can increase accuracy in terms of time and location, but they can't ensure accuracy on the over-effectiveness of their attacks, therefore not better achieving their military objectives, and also they cannot ensure that the attacks are proportionate and in conformation with the international law, basically. And yes, maybe they could reduce casualties on their side because they don't have to send their own troops out, but what about the receiving end? They obviously don't care. In conclusion, I'll introduce you guys to the Stop Killer Robots campaign. Certain things have been done in the university already by Amnesty International and also by Lawyers Without Borders. We've been trying to raise awareness on killer robots and what we can do about them. According to a global survey commissioned by them, 62% of the respondents actually think that we should not have lethal autonomous weapons being used. So what is the takeaway of today's talk? AI opens up a lot of possibilities, but how should we govern them? And how can we strike a balance between ensuring technological development, but at the same time remaining human integrity? Thank you.